I explicitly support what this president's doing.
All right, let's see it.
And I've been following this president's administration closely. I haven't yet to read or hear one thing said or done as a Christian pastor that my heart doesn't leap and rejoice for. I'd go further. I believe every Christian pastor has a moral obligation to stand with this administration, because this administration, as far as we can tell so far, in everything they have done, and I care about action, and everything they have done, are aligning themselves with the moral law of God. And if we can't stand and support that, we just have our head so far in the sand that we're not helpful anymore.
So this kind of rhetoric is a wonderful manifestation of one end of the spectrum of Christianity, from the love your neighbor Christianity to the storm the Capitol Christianity. And that spectrum is primarily about the degree to which your Christianity compels you to either overcome or give into the baser urges of your intuitions and your identity politics. On the love your neighbor end of that spectrum of Christianity, you're supposed to overcome those intuitions, those identity politics. You're supposed to set aside, or at least not prioritize, your own personal interests and the interests of the social identities that are closest and most important to you, in order to expand the scope of that access to power and resources to those who are outside of the social identities that are closest to you and most important to you. On the storm the Capitol Christianity end of that spectrum, your Christianity compels you to give into and to slake the baser urges of your intuitions and your identity politics, and to expressly seek out greater access to power and resources for yourself, even at significant cost to the well-being and even the very lives of those social identities that are not closest to you and not of greatest importance to you. This is the I'm going to get mine Christianity. And it is precisely what Jesus is condemning and excoriating in the New Testament when he talks about the folks who disfigure their faces when they fast in public and stand on the street corner praying out loud in order to be seen of men. The idea is they are putting their piety on display in order to signal to others their credibility, their piety, so that they can advance their standing within those social identities that are important to them. And this is what Jesus explicitly excoriated and condemned as hypocrisy throughout the New Testament. And so the storm the Capitol brand of Christianity expressly rejects the most emphatic and the most central rhetoric of the letters written in red. Because if you can look at the Trump administration and all it has done and said, including the rank avarice and the rampant sexual abuse, the dehumanization of people groups in order to facilitate a genocidal campaign on the part of bad state actors, if you can look at the selective accountability for crimes, if you can look at the erosion of the principles of democracy and of liberty, if you can look at all that and it makes your heart leap for joy, you have no concern for your neighbor. Your concern is your own access to power and resources, and you see all of these things as advancing your access to power and resources and your personal interests. And I'm not one of those who will say this is not real Christianity, because this has been a part of Christianity since the beginning. It is absolutely real Christianity. But on that spectrum of Christianity, it is not on the love your neighbor side of Christianity. It is not on the side of the Sermon on the Mount. It is not on the side of the letters in red. It is the storm the Capitol Christianity. It is the I'm going to get mine Christianity. It is the Christianity that requires a very careful and studied renegotiation of the Bible that picks and chooses which passages it's going to consider relevant so that it can construct the notion that Christianity ought to seek out its own interests and its own access to power and resources, and ought to minoritize and marginalize and oppress folks who do not support that agenda. It is real Christianity, but it is pathetic Christianity. And the fit for this video has been Gambit.